So Exploratory online seminar number 36, how to start Exploratory for Excel users, part 2. We have compiled a list of the operations or the kind of things you can do in Exploratory that makes the transition from Excel to Exploratory as smooth as possible based on all the questions we have gathered from the users of the Exploratory in the past. And we came up with these like basically 11 types of operations in Exploratory. And then we have presented from number 1 to number 6 as a part 1 last week. Called Exploratory, how to start Exploratory for Excel users part 1. So if you haven't, I highly recommend you to watch that episode first. However, it's not like a prerequisite. You can just start from this session, no problem. But if you go through sort of like the step by step, then I'd recommend you check out the part 1. You can find the recording from our website. Go to our website exploratory.io and go to Learn. Underneath, you can find online seminar. Then when you scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's a link to the past seminars. And you can find the online seminar number 35, or I think it's supposed to be 36, but doesn't matter. Sorry, 35 actually. How to start Exploratory for Excel users part 1. Okay. So today, I'd like to cover this part 2, how to summarize the data, how to use conditions, and also how to merge multiple data sets, and then like how to transform the data from wide data to long data. I'm going to talk about what the wide data, long data in a second. And then last one, not least, is text data wrangling. This actually, consumes a lot of time, like when you want to visualize or analyze. I'd like to cover that as well. Okay, so let's start with summarized data. So we're going to use the same data, the sales data we used in the part 1 seminar last week. This one has 25 columns and 15,000 rows. Actually, the original probably like 50,000 rows. I think this screenshot was made based on the last step we did in the part 1. And then each row represents an order of a product from a customer at a given date at this store. Okay, and then the summarize is, many of you guys probably familiar. So let's say like you have the original data at the right-hand side, and then 3 rows for the US, 3 rows for Japan, and you want to aggregate or summarize so that you're going to have 1 row for each country, US and Japan, but then you want to, let's say, like use the sum function or something to combine. Calculate all, adding up all those numbers or, counting number of the rows or something like that. Typically in Excel, you use something called pivot table to summarize the data. In Exploratory, there are 2 ways to do it. And the first one, this is also, sorry. This is the 2 ways to do it. Left-hand side, so you can summarize the data under the chart view by using summarize table. Or you want to create a data wrangling step to summarize the data itself. So I'm going to start with the chart view summarize table first. So let's go let me just start this demo right away. So here is the sales data. Okay, and then I'm in the table view. So I can go to the chart view. I'm going to just hide the left-hand side by clicking this hide sidebar. And I'm going to create the new chart tab. And then here, there's a pivot table, summarize table. And I want to do a pivot table, summarize table, basically it's doing a similar thing. But summarize table is most of the time like what you want. You just want to summarize the data. If you want to do the pivot means like you assign a categorical column to rows and columns. So you're going to have like sort of wide columns and wide, long rows, but otherwise, most of the time, like you can use a summarize table. So let's start with this, and you can switch between summarize table and pivot table if you like later as well. Okay, so summary table. So first you want to decide how you want to group by. So let's say this data has the customer information, and the customer is from maybe Japan, from US, and then Japan is East Asia, US is North America, and so on. So those are like something called market. So I thought there is a market column somewhere. Hmm? That is country. Oh, there's a country level. Oh, that's fine. Okay, this. I thought there's a country column. Never mind. Okay, so the group by, let's say like I want to see what type of segment. That's good. What type of segment we have, the consumer and corporate office. And then now the default is like a number of rows being calculated. And the next thing I would like to do is maybe like under the segment, maybe like I want to do country. And then like a consumer segment, I have like a bunch of countries being listed. And then for each country, I have a number of rows. And then what I can do also, I can keep adding the group by, but also I can add the measures or columns to do the aggregation or summarization. So here, let's say like I want to calculate something like sales. So now like I just did total of the sales. And the same thing, like maybe I can select other things, maybe marketing cost. Okay, that sounds good. And then I can do like an average mean or like or I just keep the sum function here. So at this point though, so this is just summarizing. And then by using this, if this is all you need to do, for, let's say like I want to understand, I want to see the numbers of like a particular country or something like that. This is this is the end of the story. You don't even have to think about like how to create a step or that kind of stuff. And then this one, like when you want to even format something, let's say maybe like a sales, like here by using this format, and then let's say I want to maybe change the visual formatting, for example. Let's say like I want to show the bars, and then I can click on this apply button, and then show these bars based on the number values. Or maybe like I can just do the number formatting to just say like a currency is, this is like a US dollar, so I'm going to just put the dollar sign in there, and then do the number formatting as well. So you can do this type of color formatting or number formatting. If this is like a number, but if this is, let's say, like a text or other, you can do other type, apply the format, other formatting types as well. Okay, but the problem is sometimes like you get this aggregated data, but then on top of this data, you want to do some calculation. Maybe let's say like like you might want to calculate like sales divided by marketing cost, or you want to actually join with other data frames. Let's say like, hey, like I have some information for this particular country, like let's say the population or something like that. Like I want to join together, and then I want to divide sales by population and so on. So in that case, you want to actually create the data instead of just visualizing the data. What I mean is basically like you want to summarize this data as the data wrangling step. What is data wrangling? Which is a right-hand side thing. So let's take a look at that, this one as well. So I go to the table view. You can do this under the summary view, table view, or even in the chart view as well. But especially the summarize, it's to me personally, it's easier to do in a table view. So let's go here. And let's say like I want to basically do the same thing, which is, what did I do? I started with a segment, right? So it's group by, and then like I group by the country, and then like I aggregated the sales and the marketing costs. I want to create the same same data by adding a new step, so or transforming the data in front of me. Write this data. So from segment, and I can select the summarize bracket aggregate, and then this puts the segment column under the group by default. And then this is similar to what we had, right, at the first, like when I started creating a summarizing table. summarize table. Then whatever the columns I can add, in this case, let's add the country. And also, I can actually change it. So this one, like I can just drag and drop to change the position. If I want to have start with the country first and then the segment, I can change that as well. This time, I'm going to just keep it as a segment and the country. And then like a value, let's say I want to do the sales first and then marketing cost. Exact the same way I did. Okay, here we go. And then I can even change the column name if I like. Inside the summarize dialog, you can create another step for renaming the column names. Or if for the summarize something like this, I can just change it right away. So let's say like I don't need to have marketing cost. I'm going to just go with marketing or something. I can do that as well. And then run it. And see here, we have the data. So right-hand side, notice that there's a summarize step that's being added newly. And then that means I have the data before the summarize, and I have the data after the summarize. And the cool thing about this is now I can use this to visualize by creating the charts or joining with other data frames, or I can do some calculation. Let's say, like, hey, you know what, like, I want to divide sales by marketing, and then maybe, I don't know, sales efficiency, or whatever that could be. I can do that as well. Okay, so this is one sort of like kind of confusing. I mean, like most folks I find when they start using Exploratory, they feel like when you want to aggregate the data, you have to aggregate from here, or like you have to summarize from here. But most of the time, like all you need to do is just go to the chart view and then selecting the summarize table. This is good enough most of the time. When you want to actually select this summarize from the column header menu is to create the step to transform the data, so sort of like kind of underlying data. Okay, so that's summarize topic. Okay, so let's go to the next thing. I want to make sure the chat. Okay, I wanted to make sure that everyone can hear my voice. Oh, okay. The next one is the condition. And if else or case when. This one, okay, Excel, sorry with some Japanese letters here, but I couldn't get that. I didn't have time to refresh this one with English. But anyway, so it's in Excel, you would use if function to, if the given condition match, you want to assign a particular value, otherwise another value types of things. Okay, so let's say we have the data like this, and then I want to create a condition to see if the sales value is greater than, let's say, 1,000 or something. If that's the case, I want to label high, otherwise low, or something like that. Okay, so you can do this by selecting replace values and by setting conditions from the column header menu. Okay, and then so this one too. Let's do a quick demo. So let's say from here, this sales column, I want to create a new column to say like high sales or low sales or something like that. And then the threshold is probably like a $200,000. So there are some countries like here is a Colombia. Not so many. I'm not sure. Like, let's go to the summary view, and I want to pick some numbers that kind of make sense. And it looks like, wow, that's a lot of numbers here. So yeah, maybe like 200,000 or something like that. Like that's to be the threshold. So by the way, you can select this create calculation, and then if you know it, you can use if else or case when function. Case when can handle multiple conditions. If else is just one single condition. But anyway, I find this one is easier to do because it's a UI. So to start with, so here's by setting conditions, and then let's say this is like volume. and then I can create a condition. And this condition dialog is basically the same dialog that you see with a filter. So basically, you want to create a filter is all basically the condition, right? So you use the same UI, and then sales is in this case like a greater than. Let's say I forgot. Maybe like a 200. Did I say that? Okay. $200,000 or something, and I click OK. And then what I want to do is like, hey, if the condition matches what the value I want to give, so I can click on this one. This is the same editor that you see with create calculations. So I can type value. One thing to note though, like if you want to give the letters, then you have to surround that by the double quote, so or single quote, either way. So let's say hi or something. But this one doesn't have to be always a string or text. And you can type, let's say, like a column name, let's say like a country column, or you can create a calculation if sales march by 2 or something like that. Anyway, so if I click OK, and then another thing is if the condition doesn't match, so like otherwise, what do you want to do? So default is a column name, the default value, but in this case, I like to override it. I want to say like row as a letter. So now like we have two patterns. If I run this, and then there's this is a new column, and sometimes you see high. So this one must be greater than, what was the condition again? That was greater than $200,000. So in that case, I have high value and otherwise low. So I created this condition, and then I can start adding, more conditions. For example, greater than 100,000, greater than 10,000, greater than 5,000, or something like that. And I can give the label, different label names. But also, so those are like, you can click on this plus button. But the other thing is a little tricky is, no, I want to actually make sure like if the sales is greater than 200,000, but also the marketing is the next column right here is, let's say, greater than I don't know, maybe $10,000 or something like that. So how are we going to do it? You can click on this one, and that's where you want to use this custom tab. So right now, like I have sales greater than 200,000. I'm going to just copy this because I'm a lazy guy, and then go to the custom tab and just paste it. And then I want to, we can extend this by using and. You can use this like a, what do you say, like a vertical bar that is for or condition. This time, like I want to use and condition. And then marketing is a column like I want to use for another condition. So marketing cost is, let's say like $10,000 or something like that. Then now like I have two conditions together presented as a one single condition. Okay, so then I can click on OK and then run. And then this time, this one is basically satisfying. I mean, like both sales and marketing satisfying that condition because marketing is also greater than $10,000. So it's high. Okay, so that's how you can create. It's kind of like tricky to say because you can create multiple condition in the here by clicking the plus. But this one, each condition will have its own corresponding value. But what I'm saying here is inside one single condition, but you can make that as sort of like multiple conditions within the one single condition. You get it? So hope that makes sense. Okay. So the next one, that's the condition. And here. So next topic is merge. So sometimes when you have the data, and then think about like, for example, like you're working on like this, this month's data. Well, I mean like last month's data, February data, right? So you do the data wrangling or visualization and all that stuff, and then like you have that. And the next month somebody comes in and hey, I got the new data. Can you actually add this data to your analysis or your chart or something like that? So then like you have to import the data, and then you need to combine from January, February, March data together in the same data frame. So that's merge. So this is similar to join at the number 6. So join is getting the columns from another data frame. That's join. Merge is getting data or getting rows from another data frame. So it's sort of like a difference between the columns and rows. Okay, so to do this, let me just get that new data imported. So I prepare for, like this is a global sales data, and I prepare the new data. So let me just import that quickly. Here, okay. Then click on the save button. Now I have similar data. So like original global sales data, let me just go to the summary view. And if I go to the local first step, originally this is like an order, at least do the data type conversion. So data from 2017 to 2019, 2020, November 30th, right? And then like, this new data is 2020 December. So like that December, 2020 December is a new part of the data. I want to bring this into the original data. So I go to the original data, I mean like the main data that I want to add the new data to. And then here's the thing. Right now, like I've selected the step 2. It depends, like, what operation you are doing. You might be in like these different steps, but you can select the step to merge the data. So if I do the merge, that operation we are about to see, then like this new data is going to be added at this one as a step 6, and then rest of the stuff is going to be pushed down. But this time, like I realized that like this or new data also probably I have to do the similar data wrangling. Some of the stuff I might don't have to, but most of the stuff. So let's say, for example, here's a step 2. I have like a parse number. This is like converting from the text to numerical, and then let's see the target. And when I see the sales is, again, this data has a character. So probably I should just bring this data at right after this source step. Then once it's merged, combining with the new data and all the original data together can go through all this data wrangling step. Then I don't have to do that again for the new data, right? So let's, in that case, whatever the step like you want to add the merge, you want to merge the data to, that's the step like you want to select. Then the merge menu cannot be, it's not here. It's actually this plus button because it doesn't really belong to any particular column. So you want to click on this plus button right hand side top, and then there is a merge menu, add rows and union. And then you want to select that new data. So in this case, global sales new underscore en. And then you can click on this run button. And then here it is. It looks like I've got the new data. So because I have the number of rows 51,000. Before that, I had like 49,000. Okay. Then if I click on the next step, let's say like next step, like number 3, this one is to convert this order date columns and then the sales column, and then looks okay. And if I go to the summary view and check the order date column here, the 2000, now the end date or max date is the 2020 December 31st. So that looks good. And also here's the ID column. So I can see the original, this global sales is the data frame on this data frame. And the global sales Excel new EN is the new data that I just merged. And then that ID is basically showing which rows are coming from, which data frame. Okay, so that's pretty convenient. And then after that, like if I go to that step 10, all the data wrangling operation that I have created before be automatically applied on top of that merged data. Okay, so that's the merge in Excel. All right, so let's go to the next topic. For this is transforming the wide data to long data. This is kind of like a common problem. Like once in a while, like you see this problem, and kind of like it used to freak me out. Um, and then, so for example, when you go to the Apple and then you Google Apple Map mobility data or something, and you can download that CSV data, and then they make the data every day updated. So this data is, this is kind of the beginning of last year, like when the COVID started spreading. People wanted to see, like, like many of the cities and countries, and then everybody started kind of trying to asking people to stay home. And then Apple and Google released this mobility data based on Apple's case, based on like 2020, January 13th, like how much people change their behavior in terms of the movement by driving or walking or transportation. So, and then they collect, they have the map. So every time you use map, and then they collect all the mobility data. This is aggregated data. It's not like individual level data. But you can see, for example, like United States, I live in California, how the California's, movement has changed over the period of time. So that's pretty cool. But the problem is, like you see, it's like each date, like January 13th, 14th, 15th, presented as a individual column. So this type of data is actually kind of hard to use. Why? Because I want to create a chart like this, right? So the first day is 100%, then like how the movement change over time. But however, when I try to do it, um, it's access to the date column to date column to the x-axis. Now all I see is this like individual date, and if I selected 2020 January 13th, I mean that what I'm about to visualize is that data of the particular date. No, that's not what I want. Like I want from 2020 January 13 to all the way to today, and then create a line chart or something. So what basically we need to do is these columns to be kind of combined together and presented as a date columns. So this type of data, by the way, that we are looking at here is called wide data. The new data being added or new observation being added, then it goes to new columns being created, ended up like getting data wider and wider and wider. So that this type of data called wide data. As opposed to this, when you add the new data or new observation, let's say like new date for like, for example, today's new data, then that will be added as a new rows that will end up making the data to be longer and then longer. So this type of data is called long data. So long data is, in general, is much easier to visualize because once you get this type of data, like the date column and value, then all I need to do in the chart is assign a date column to the x-axis and the value column to y-axis. Then I can get the mobility trend chart nicely. So what we want to do is transforming the wide data to long data. So that is, we call it gather in Exploratory or in R as well. So that's what we want to do. So let's do it quickly with this data. I have imported this Apple mobility trend data, and this might take a little bit time to generate a summary view because we have 336 columns. And then, like we saw, each date has its own column. And then, whoa, I'm going to just wait for a little bit. Okay, here we go. So now like I have a bunch of columns, and so I want to basically gather these columns into a pair of the two, columns, key and value, or date and value. And then to do all I need to do is select all the columns. But this case, there are like 300 columns I have to select. I have to go through, scroll down. It's just kind of like cumbersome. So what I'm going to do is select maybe as multiple columns, whatever the columns like in front of me, it's easier to select. And then from any column header, open the column header menu, and then there is a gather bracket wide to long. And underneath, there is a submenu. And here, you can select this select columns. In that case, in the dialog we are about to see, we'll have like every single columns. You have to add every single columns. That means you have to add like 300, more than 300 columns. And that's kind of going crazy. So what I can do is just selected range. Then what I'm going to see is the start columns and the end columns. Start column is this 2020 January 13th. That's fine. End column is right now the January 21st, but we know there are tons of other columns, right? So I'm going to scroll all the way down, and this data turned out to be up to December 8th in the last year. So I can select this one. And then I can just click on the run button. And this is going to transform this wide data to long data. And then key column has a date, and the value column has the original value, which is in this case is basically percentage difference from the original date. Okay, or I mean the first day. So this is once you get this, then it's much easier to deal with it. Now, like 1.5 million rows, as opposed to before that, like we had the how many rows we had? We used to have like 4,600 rows, but we make it from the wide data to long data, so the rows become much more. So this is, by the way, one way to select the columns, basically the target, right? Target for like this gathering operation. I would recommend other way actually for this type of data. What I mean by that is when you select like from 2000, this start date and end date, if your analysis is just this data, and then after that you don't have to update the data, this is fine. This is totally fine. But most of the time, like based on my experience, like Apple update the data every day. So you might not do this every day, but you might want to do like every week or something. You want to update that data. To update, this case is this CSV file, so you want to override the original CSV file and then click on this re-import button. Sometimes you get this type of data. I saw many like a COVID-19 related data usually hosted at the GitHub. So therefore, you can actually specify, instead of like a download the CSV and import the data, you can actually specify the URL as a remote CSV. In that case, by just clicking this button, you get the latest data of any day that you happen to be. In that case, new column being added for the new dates, but those data you've never seen those newly added data because you set to particular date to particular date. So that's the problem. So instead of like selecting explicitly the range of the columns you want to transform, you want to use this exclude option. When you use exclude option, then you can set the columns that are going to be always the same, right? Even the new columns being added, new date being added. But let's say this like a geotype to this country, these are always the same. But this is basically telling the system saying like, hey, exclude these columns, but use all the other columns as a target for gather operation or transforming the wide to long operation. So for sort of like maintenance reason, like I recommend this way to do it. But the result is going to be exactly the same. And then I can change the column name here. So let's say this is like a date, and then this is maybe value is fine. And then click run button. and then I get the same data. There's one problem here. This date column, this is supposed to be date, but it's presented as character. Whenever you see something like this, I recommend just fix it quickly so that you don't have to deal with it later. So here, like change data type and then convert to date time. And have done this in the last episode, so I'm not going to go into detail. All I need to do is make sure that order of year, month, day is reflecting or matching with the selection here. So like year, month, day, and then I'm going to just click run button as is, and then I get this one, date and value. Once I get this data being cleaned up, then I can go to the chart view, and then I can draw the line chart, for example. And here, now I can assign the date columns. And I want to see, not by the year, let's say like by maybe like a day or something. And then like y-axis, I'm going to assign the value. And then this one is a summing, but like this one has tons of countries and cities data, so like there's no point of like adding up like percentage numbers. So I'm going to just select the mean average, and then this is going up and down. Obviously, probably this going up is usually in a kind of weekly trend, maybe like weekend people move more or something. So from here, you can filter to particular country you are interested in, and you can assign maybe country or county, or United States case, you can assign state or so on. Okay, so let me just do that. For example, the country, I want to see maybe like this is where I live, so the United States data, and then maybe I can assign the state. I think it was sub-region is the state, I believe. Here you go, Alabama, and then all the stuff, all the United States, and then the day is too much, so I'm gonna just change that to week, and then week. And then here is one thing though, here's other group is being automatically set. When you have many values, like in this case, 54 values, probably 50 states plus like some, I forgot the name of it, like DC or like some kind of special place, special state kind of place. Anyway, so then in that case, like you automatically set like frequency. So that means that based on number of rows, like a top 20 becomes as is, but then the others, in this case, the other 34 states becomes under the others group. But in this case, I want to see all of them. So I can just set this one to none, and then apply. And then now like I see like all the 54 states movement for all the 54 states here. Okay, so that's it's very simple version, and you can of course extend from here the way you like. For this seminar, like I'm gonna go to the next topic. So this is the last, but not least. I think this is actually when people say like data wrangling is so cumbersome and takes a lot of time, sort of things. This text data wrangling is one place is very notorious. Similar name like United States or that United States or US, similar name, but in the computer, like they are considered as a different value. Therefore, like your calculation get messed up. So you want to clean those things up. Anyway, so that's just one example. So the text data wrangling, you can actually by using the text wrangling UI. So it's pretty intuitive to do it, I think. But I want to introduce certain kind of basic things first. So the way you do is from the column header menu, select the text data wrangling, and then kind of got towards the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 from the bottom. And then underneath, there's this remove, replace, extract, convert. These are the 4 sort of like big operations. Most of the tasks are under these operations. And then from there, you select the submenu, then you'll see this text data wrangling UI. And then, so in the right-hand side, you see the preview, and the preview area is showing the unique values, and then and also along with the number of rows for that, how many times that unique value appears. So that's the count. And then You can search it, if you're looking for something particular, text matching. And then also you can click on this show invisible characters to show the space and tab and the new lines. These are the kind of tricky things because you can't see it, but actually they're different as a data. So by clicking this and then what type of problem you're dealing with, and you can understand it better. And then there are tons of operation types. So even though you start with a column header menu and by selecting particular operation, but once you launch this text data wrangling UI, then you can switch, among different operations. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use this Unicorn data. Unicorn is the private company whose value is already being greater than $1 billion. When I started this talk, maybe started Exploratory, that was 4 years ago, only 4 years ago, and I was using this Unicorn data sometimes. But then at that time, still Unicorn was sort of kind of a special thing because $1 billion valuation before going to IPO. But these days, this $1 billion doesn't seems to be surprising anyone. It's just become super normal. I mean, in terms of the startup. So anyway, so nonetheless, it turned out when you go to this website, you can see all the unicorn companies. Right now, there are 554 unicorn companies. All of the companies is about IPO within a few years, or maybe 10 years. I don't know. But anyway, so you can get this data by scraping, web scraping. So I did that, and just all I need to do is just copy and paste and then put that in a web scraping page and then download it. So that's the data I like to use because that data needs some work. So now there are 4 types: replace, remove, extract, convert. There are other type of operations too, but these are the main things you find usually. So start with replace. Well, it turned out, replace is, for example, the left-hand side. There's a fintech, edtech, or financial and education, that kind of stuff. And then I want to actually replace part of the word to something else. That's replace, right? So that type of operation. And in this data, there's a capital G, and we know, hey, this is actually Google. So they actually put a different name, but we know that. So we want to change that to Google, and then later, we want to see how many unicorns Google has invested. So to do, let's go here. Let's select the unicorn data. Here we go. And there you go. Here's a capital G. I want to change this one with Google, for example. So to do from the column header menu, and then here, work with text data. That's the menu you want to select. And after that, I can go to replace and the text. And then this opens the text data wrangling UI. And then I like to do is, for example, make sure I'm going to capital G. And that's the word we are looking for. Here you go. And then, so what I want to do is capital G, and that is Google. And then I have a couple options. If that is at the beginning or anywhere, or ignore the cases or no cases kind of stuff. So I'm going to go with the default for now, and I can click on this preview button and then make sure all this capital G is being replaced with Google. Okay, and it looks okay, so I'm going to just click on Run button, and then that just override the original column. So that looks good. And then the next one I like to do is the remove operation. The remove operation is, before going to the remove operation, I like to transform this data. And what I want to do is, as you see, there are 4 investors in one row, as one value. And the next one is maybe a 4, same, maybe 3 or 4 investors. I want to transform this data so that each investor will be presented in each row. So that I can do, I want to separate by the comma, so that each individual investor will be separated, and then each individual investor will be presented in each row. To do, from column header menu, select separate to columns or separate rows. In this case, I want to separate rows. I want to make this data longer, and then separating by comma. And then if I click on run button, and then this makes kind of like a longer data. And then like you see now, ByteDance becomes 4 rows, SpaceX becomes 3 rows because they have 4 investors or 3 investors respectively. And then from here, like I want to start working on this. Okay, so and I want to focus on this SoftBank. And SoftBank Corp or SoftBank, there are like other type of SoftBank entries, like capital or something like that. So that basically is something I like to do. Here, I want to get rid of this group so that like this becomes just a SoftBank. And any variation of the SoftBank, I want to make that as a SoftBank group, capital, SoftBank company or whatever. Always, I want to make them as SoftBank. Then like I can understand how many unicorns they have, right? So to do, again, from the column header menu, work with text data, and then remove and text. And then like first, like I want to make sure like I'm looking at the right data. So like I'm type the SoftBank, and then these are the different entries. This seems like same, but it's slightly different in different ways. So first, I want to remove the group, and then if I do it, looks okay. But the problem is though here there's a capital and also the corp, and these are also SoftBank too. So like I want to remove those. To do here under the operation type, there's a multiple candidates option. Once you select it, then you can actually use comma to list all the candidates to match. So in this case, let's select a corp and capital. And it looks okay, like highlighted okay. So I preview it, and that's what I wanted it. So that looks good. But one problem we need to be careful though. If I clear this search here and make sure this operation not just the SoftBank, but also apply to other data too. And then make sure this is what you want. And for example, this Sequoia Capital China, and then we have removed this capital, even though capital is not at the end, but in the middle. Sometimes this is okay, but in this case, you know what? Like I want to remove this capital or group, whatever is being used only at the end, and then you can use this position. I can select the end, and then if I preview it, then what happens is this middle capital is not removed, but if you have the capital at the end, it's removed. So this seems to be okay. So I'm going to go ahead with that and run. And then now SoftBank all the variations of SoftBank becomes a SoftBank. That looks good. And then here's a table filter. I want to just kind of like show only the SoftBank and how I want to count like how many of the SoftBank. So here I'm going to use this contains and SoftBank and then run button. And then looks like there's 10 rows of SoftBank. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna just ignore cases, and actually there are more. There are 35 SoftBanks. So looks like if I had to actually do like ignore cases, and then like I now like, oh yeah, because the SoftBank like small b or big B, kind of like combinations. So now like I have 35 SoftBank. So there are a few problems here. Number one is this like a title case or uppercase thing is not kind of mixed, so therefore it's kind of confusing. So like I want to make sure like we have the same cases. So that's where like the convert comes in. So like I work with text data and there's a convert, and I can just do like uppercase or lowercase, but let's go with the title case. That looks much better. And then let's see like a SoftBank thing, and if I preview it, and then all the stuff like this, like a soft B as a capital becomes a soft B as lowercase, and that looks good. And then click run button. Okay, that looks good. So like we have like 35 SoftBank investments in the unicorns, and if we go to the summary view and you see select investors, SoftBank is 30. what is supposed to be 35. So there's a gap there. And that is because some of you guys might have noticed some of them has actually the space at the end. So this type of when you do the text operation, you got to make sure there's no extra spaces and stuff. So again, work with text data. And then there are a couple of like options for removing spaces. So here, spaces or repeated spaces or reading and trading spaces. In this case, obviously, like we don't want to have like reading or trading spaces. So you can select this option. Another option is actually useful is this is going to do the job for this SoftBank. But if you're concerned, let's say like if I click on the show space thing, and then it seems to be okay, but sometimes happen is there's an extra space between the words. And in that case, instead of just using reading and trading spaces, you want to select repeated spaces. And this I also actually do the pretty good job. So let's see like SoftBank. Um, Even a leading case, this is kind of basically get rid of any excess spaces. So this looks okay in terms of what we want to do. And click OK. And then now, like if I go to the summary view, and then now like we have the SoftBank as 34, and then here we have 35. I think there's a one extra thing is still like there's another company kind of like mixed together. But other than that, looks okay. So this is how you can sort of operate with the text data. I think that the time has already come, so like I'm gonna skip through some of the slides and then I will open up the Q&A session. So the last another thing is the extract. This is one thing we haven't done is sometimes you have the URL, sometimes you have the telephone number or email in the data. You might want to extract. You can actually do that. So another thing is sometimes like there is a inside some text inside a bracket, square bracket, or or maybe like it doesn't have to be bracket. Maybe like it's surrounded by a double quote or whatever that could be, and you can set it and then extract or remove as well. And the convert, we have done like an uppercase, lowercase convert, but also you can convert from IP address to country name or country name. Country name is actually kind of tricky, but as well as United States, states or county name as well. But because the CN means China or US means United States, and so you want to convert from this. These are called ISO2 code. To regular name. So you can do that. And you can do the vice versa. So you can convert from like regular name to ISO 2 or ISO 3 character code or numeric code as well. And this country name is pretty flexible. So even like when you have that United States or US or United States of America, it can handle it. Like so, your original data is kind of like valid for the United States, but by using this conversion, you can clean it up to all the name to be United States, for example. Okay, so that's that. I think we covered that most of the stuff. And then more thing you can do with the text data wrangling. If you want to know more, go to our website, go find how to bracket tutorials, and then there's a text data section, or just type like whatever the things that you like to find out, and then you can get that tutorials there as well. Okay,